Hello and welcome to this episode of TheSquare. I'm Poonam Schallenberger and I'm here with Matt McDonald, commercial sector leader. Welcome, Matt.
Good morning.
So glad to have you here. We're talking a little bit about what you do in the commercial sector, and I know it as sort of designing the outside of buildings. But can you talk to me a little bit about what being an architect in the commercial sector means?
Sure. So if you look at the root of the word, commerce makes money. So that's typically what we do, is anything that is a money-making entity. Our specialty over the years has been office buildings, corporate build-to-suit, those types of things. So for private clients, private developers, so they are making money for the developers. But over the years, we have evolved into a wide range of things. And I joke, because of our firm, I say if it's not a hospital or a data center or a school, it usually lands in our studio. So we've got a lot of great projects and we're branching into mixed use, and that's our ultimate goal, right? Is to be able to do every entity of a mixed use, live, work, and play all as part of an overall development.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. These projects and buildings really kind of give shape to a city. And Corgan has been part of shaping a lot of what Dallas looks like and has looked like and will look like in the future. But you're not from Dallas, are you?
No, ma'am.
Where are you from?
Do we really have to go there?
Yeah.
All right. Born and raised in Roswell, New Mexico.
When did you come to Dallas?
1997.
Okay. So I got here about 10 years ago. I think together we've seen a lot of long-term growth, even a lot of change. I know I've seen Dallas change so much over just the past decade. What are some can you walk us through kind of some of the major changes and transformations you've seen this city, architecturally speaking, and maybe kind of what prompted all of those changes?
Yeah, well, I fell in love with Dallas early in the 90s when I was in college and came to visit Dallas for a weekend, and actually stayed the weekend here in the West End, and fell in love with this great concept of redeveloping something old. And right then, in that time, the West End was in its heyday. There was shops and restaurants and bars and all sorts of fun places to hang out. Everybody walked. It was very pedestrian focused. And when I got the offer to come to work at Corgan, I realized I'm going to be in the West End, so I could live and work down there, all day, every day, and it was fantastic. But as the economy kind of changed and its heyday kind of went, one of the things that came through at that time was the DART light rail, and that came through the city and started kind of the construction of it really started impacting the vibrancy of a lot of these restaurants. There were so many restaurants and shops that were easily accessible, but when the DART came through, it just the construction delayed some of the ability for those places to be successful. Once it's been established, it's been a tremendous asset to the city, but the construction of it really impacted a lot of the vitality of the West End. Followed right after that was when the city voted for a bond election for the American Airlines arena, where was the home of the Dallas Mavericks and the Dallas Stars, and it passed. I remember it was a very shaky transition. It passed by 1%. It was 49 to 51%, and they allowed tax dollars for that old power plant to be redeveloped as the new arena. And it brought a new vibrancy and a new life to this end of downtown. And, you could argue that some of the effectiveness has not been as successful as it wanted to, but it really did vitalize this part of downtown. And I feel like, through the pandemic and those kind of things, it's been fun to watch it ebb and flow, but I feel like we're back on an upsurge in this part of downtown now.
Yeah, I feel like the city, and the Metroplex for sure, but the city itself has made so many headlines about all these businesses moving here, families moving here, whether it's to the city proper or to some of the suburbs around it. But it's not just this growth. It's like we've almost sort of seen the buildings kind of give continued shape to the city. Like all the cranes, they're doing something,
Yes.
Right? I remember I had some friends from California visit, and I don't know if this is actually true, but the number of architecturally significant buildings in this city really kind of make it an iconic place. You and I have talked a little bit about this, but do you want to share a little bit about some of the iconic sort of eras and architects that have given shape to this city?
Yeah, so if you look back in the early to mid 80s, It was when Dallas had its kind of heyday in a lot of the development. Dallas has always been a very business-friendly environment, so it's been a welcoming community of businesses and companies to come and establish and plant roots here. So the 80s, when a lot of the high-rises were developed and a lot of the all-glass buildings were done, and that's when the whole signature neon thing started happening, where all the buildings were outlined in neon. But at the end of the day, those buildings weren't sustainable without a well-rounded community. So in the early 2000s, late 90s, the idea of a vibrant arts district came to fruition. And that was where a lot of, there have been several architectural significant developments here at that date, but that really brought a new level of design awareness to the city. So you've got Norman Foster and I.M. Pei and OMA and a lot of those great folks that came and developed museums and performing arts venues, all within a district that have been extremely vibrant and reshaped a whole neighborhood, if you will, of that aspect of downtown. You pair that with the Clyde Warren Park that bridged the highway that separated downtown from uptown. It really created this whole vibrant neighborhood in that part of town that was, segregated and siloed, now all together, and they'll share a common green space. So it's been really neat to watch all the development happen up and around that park, as the Arts District has been the catalyst for a lot of that development.
Yeah, you bring up a few good points. In order for a city to take off and thrive in the way that Dallas has, you don't just need the businesses to come in and the families to come in. They need things when they're here, right? They need office spaces, schools, healthcare facilities, and Corgan's been a part of shaping some of the most iconic buildings that do that. Can you talk us through a little bit about what it takes to create a really sustainable and thriving area like Dallas?
I was in a training course several years ago, and I'll never forget this. There was the head physician or the head recruiter for UT Southwestern, the medical school here, said that for them to recruit the top tier medical physicians and the top tier doctors, they need an opera. Specifically, that was the one thing that would attract that type of physician and that type of expertise. So that is what has kept the Arts District and the arts themselves so vibrant in our part of town. And to be able to recruit and solicit that kind of talent to what is arguably a premier healthcare community here has been a real. Those are very symbiotic to one another. You have to have the arts to bring the doctors, and vice versa to sustain the arts. So it's been a real interesting thing to watch. And you pair that with all sorts of other business owners and tremendous urban space and parks and the residents, bringing them downtown. That has really made Dallas a very vibrant and continues to grow in this capacity.
Right. It's like having the right critical infrastructures, which we kind of obviously think of, but then these sort of community civic gathering spaces. I mean, Dallas has really earned a reputation as a national and iconic sort of place to go, where you're not just going there and kind of living, but you're really living. I don't know if that makes any sense. So when we talk about designing these cities, we're designing the things that people need and want to live full lives, but you're also kind of giving shape to what the identity of these neighborhoods look like. You touched on this a little bit earlier. Dallas has a sort of architectural language a little bit. Maybe you've seen it change. How would you describe that, or how would you describe the evolution of Dallas's design?
Good or bad, the evolution and the growth of everything here in Dallas has been based on the car. So highways and roadways and those kind of things, they define neighborhoods, they divide neighborhoods. We are a very car-centric community. And because of that, you've got a lot of commuters and those kind of things. So the idea of how we manage our highways and how they are supposed to divide and form borders and eliminate borders has been a real interesting thing to watch here in Dallas. If you think about, Highway 75, when they lowered that and gave the ability to let streets continue across, you had the City Place development, which was supposed to be this magnificent dual tower thing with bridges across, and never came to fruition. But again, those kind of ideas, where the highways are normally dividers, they were using those bridges and those things as uniters. I referenced the Clyde Warren Park thing earlier. That used to divide uptown from downtown, but now with the park across, they have some real vibrant space that connects those two cities and made what was a derelict neighborhood like St. Thomas and that part of uptown not all that desirable. It's the hottest residential real estate and office and retail space in Dallas now. So you've had those business decisions that have started to form a lot of the architectural decisions. And because you've got this level of sophistication now coming and being in Dallas, that has started to elevate the architectural expectations, if you will. And again, going back to the Arts District, where you've got world premier architects here, and we've been a part of several of those things. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, you're really talking about a design that's born out of the need of a city, right? Whether it's okay, we got a bunch of cars now, or we got a bunch of people who want beautiful arts venues. Let's talk about maybe a project that Corgan's kind of helped a client navigate. Well, here, how have the needs of the city impacted the needs of a space or a building? Can you think of one?
Yeah, a couple come to mind actually. Again, with the attractive and the business nature, the business welcoming aspect that Dallas has always had. With that comes tremendous growth, right? So the hub as a transportation hub has been tremendous here in Dallas. DFW started as a decision between both Dallas and Fort Worth to be a major airport to this part of the country, and so we've done umpteen millions of square feet of work out there at DFW. But a little more specific to Dallas, when Love Field needed to go through an uplift because of the growth and the lifting of the Wright Amendment and some of those other things that gave Southwest Airlines some more freedom to fly and increase their capacity, we got to revitalize the entire vision of Love Field for what it was. And what's great about that is that's a two-time story. You know, Jack Corgan Sr. designed Love Field the first time, and then we got to design it again. And as you said, you know, when a city's needs grow and it becomes a transportation hub, their facilities need to grow, their infrastructure needs to grow. And we have been on the forefront of several of those projects, from DFW to Love Field and Parkland Hospital, quite frankly, in that regard.
I think Love Field is such an interesting airport to fly out of for a couple of reasons, but just as a lay person and passenger, it clearly gives you this idea of Dallas in the sense that you have this beautiful design, but it feels very accessible to the passenger. How do you accomplish that? And how do you manage being a world-class city, but then also being an airport that the neighborhood kind of thinks of as our airport?
And it's a great question, because as I said, a lot of what we design, and you know, it is transportation focused. So in there you have planes to manage, but you've got cars and people to manage. And so the idea of bringing the scale down to a pedestrian scale, so it's not overwhelming you or feeling, you know, like it's in your face. DFW is very spread out. Love Field is somewhat compact. You reference Parkland Hospital, same kind of thing, very tall building, but the design concept there was bringing the park back to Parkland. And so creating a lot of green space and a lot of landscape that make it pedestrian focused are extremely important in making them a little more welcoming, whereas you're not just coming up against a bunch of concrete and steel, which, again, you might be in your car, but how you experience that is really important when it's at the appropriate scale.
So, Matt, you mentioned earlier how Dallas is such a business-friendly destination. And I think just as the city evolves and kind of the architecture is able to respond to the needs of the city, I think one of the reasons why people are coming here is because of the ways that the city is able to accommodate their own growth. Can you help me kind of understand the ways that we've worked with our clients to understand where they are now and then where they might be going, maybe from one of our corporate clients?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, you know, earlier, the business-friendly environment of Texas as a whole, but specifically here in Dallas, it extends beyond the Dallas borders and into a lot of our suburbs. And so the race for talent and the race for growth in each of those suburbs has been fun to watch. And we've had a front row seat with a lot of corporate relocations, most coming from California, some coming from other states, but a lot coming to Texas, regardless from where they're from, whether it's a consolidation or a relo. The idea of being a part of a lot of those has been tremendous. You look at Kubota that moved out to Grapevine. You've got Charles Schwab that moved out to Westlake. And again, they were able to provide amenities. The idea of the master plan would provide amenities for their folks while they brought 6,000 or 8,000 people to an area that would make a city more vibrant. We created our own insular kind of community with CityLine for State Farm's headquarters up in Richardson. And that was a 185-acre master plan that included 2 million square feet of healthcare facilities, and 1,200 apartment units, all around a singular, a nucleus. And what was interesting about that is the The State Farm folks said, we're going to bring 10,000 people here. Mr. Developer, you all provide all the amenities. So we really created our own little community right there that sustained from, it was a 24-hour thing with live, work, and play components there. So it's been fun to be a part of all that.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about clients relocating to Dallas. And it's interesting because as a resident of Dallas, there are fewer and fewer people I come across that are from here, right? There are people who've moved here or whatever. And so Dallas has both been able to maintain its identity while also becoming this sort of melting pot of people and companies and folks who have moved to the city. How do you honor the clients that are moving in their sort of roots and become a global sort of identity, have a global identity, but then also kind of maintain a local feel?
A lot of that depends on the corporation. And again, if they're coming here, they're probably attracted to that culture. So a lot of them don't want to look like they're outsiders. So I'll take Toyota, for example. When we designed their headquarters, very native architecture. It was appropriate to the area, appropriate to Texas, corporate, but with a lot of regional materials. They didn't want to look like they were outsiders coming into town. I think that's kind of the case for most of our clients that want to come in. They don't want to look like outsiders. They're attracted to this culture, so they want to come in and be a part of it. And so they want to attract people that are also like-minded and from this culture. And so to bring them to a space that's familiar and reflective of the current environment, I think that's as important as the company bringing their culture and those elements to the development as well.
Yeah. And it's not just folks that are relocating. We're seeing a lot of clients who are growing and have maybe outgrown their spaces. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've seen and helped clients navigate that sort of growth?
Right. So, all right, we're working with Wells Fargo right now, exactly in the situation you're in. They've got multiple leases all over North Texas, combining them into a new corporate campus. And so the idea of finding that identity that was reflective of them and who they were, but still providing a nod to Texas and to the Irving area where they're being developed. And this is the first kind of series of high rises that have been developed in Irving in probably almost 30 years. So it's great kind of a resurgence to that part of town in Las Colinas that also had its heyday in the 80s, but has seen a little bit of a decline since then. So it's fun to kind of be part of a revitalization of that. And Harwood, this is an interesting aspect. Harwood is a district in kind of the northern aspect of downtown. This is all owned and developed by a single family, but they've created this self-perpetuating environment where they were developing office space, 30 years ago. And as those spaces become old and outdated, they've got land to redevelop and move those existing tenants into new space. They go back and revitalize the older buildings and bring them up to date in modernization. So it's a very perpetual cycle that we have just in the last few years been an integral part of. So we've got one building we've just finished. We're getting ready to start design on another. And it's been really fascinating to watch that perpetuate itself as a thriving neighborhood.
So what's interesting to me about Harwood and the Harwood district is that it's created this sort of identity of its own. It has a very distinct feel, but still kind of seamlessly fits into downtown. And they attract a certain kind of client, and you're going there to grab a great bite after work or grab a drink. Can you talk to me about how you actually design that? How do you design a building that kind of responds to and creates this very distinct neighborhood?
I talked about scale earlier, and again, the Harwood district is relatively dense and pedestrian focused, and they maximize their land. So the idea of putting these buildings right up on the street could be an intimidating gesture, but they have figured out that the idea of creating a lot of transparency and protected outdoor spaces in Texas is one of the more valuable things you can have. People love to be outside. I know it's been 108-degree summer every day, but they love to be outside but protected. So a shaded outdoor area. So we have made very deliberate gestures to bring the exterior inside. Outdoor terraces above the parking garages, making those accessible for amenity tenant lounges and those types of things. But restaurant space, having outdoor space, really makes a street feel vibrant, makes it feel very welcoming. And one of the things that the Harwood folks in particular have is a very extensive art collection. So when you're walking down the street and you see this 2-story volume there, but yet you can see the art, and it seems very approachable and it seems very welcoming. And that's the thing they want. They want to create this energy of people in and around their space. It's like being at a party, right? And you see the group that's laughing, you want to go over where they are.
Exactly. There's something about that district, right, where there's a certain kind of client that it's going to attract in terms of its office space.
Right.
But it's activated to everyone, it feels like.
So I made the analogy earlier of the doctors coming to follow the arts. A lot of their tenants are higher end law firms or accounting firms or those type of things, and they will have demands for their clients to say, I need a white tablecloth restaurant within a block of my restaurant, or I need X. And so they will help the neighborhood at the street level help form what goes into those restaurants based on what their tenants are asking for, because that's their market base for all intents and purposes.
Right. It's this sort of microcosm of what's happening to Dallas generally. We've got business, but we have art, and we have families that want a great place to go have a nice dinner. And so designing these districts sort of are these like smaller scale exercises of what's going on in the larger metroplex.
Exactly. It's just great urban design. Again, getting away a little bit more from the car-centric approach to things and making it more pedestrian and more walkable. That is the thing that that's always been a good tenet of great urban design. Dallas has just been a little slower to accept that, and so we're pushing that as much as we can.
So Matt, when we talk about all the growth of the city, you also have to be able to consider, how do you sustain it, and how do you do it in a responsible fashion? How has the commercial sector approached sustainability when it comes, or what are maybe some of the bigger challenges that you're navigating right now when it comes to sustainability?
So what's very interesting right now is a lot of the corporate clients that are developing have come to the table with a very significant sustainability initiative. Wells Fargo, I mentioned earlier, they are trying to create the very first net positive campus, meaning they're actually creating enough energy to not only to sustain the campus, but to give energy back to the power grid. So we're working with them to create a development that is 100% net zero, or ideally, like I said, net positive, where we're creating so much energy we're giving back. This will be powered by solar. This has got very intensive sustainability requirements. We've been working very closely with Varun and the whole team at Echo to finalize this, but we're pioneering some new software usage and those type of things to really understand carbon footprints. And this has all been driven a lot by, not because it's the right thing to do, but clients are now asking for it. Their evolution has been to recruit and retain talent. You've got to have a strong DEI and sustainability initiative. Yeah. And so it's been fun to be able to be on the front row of this and really bring Dallas into, some of these new and innovative ways of thinking.
Yeah. So you mentioned that some of the biggest drivers of Dallas have been cars, businesses, families. What do you think is driving maybe not the growth of the city, right? Because it's probably some of those same things. But what do you think is driving the ways that we design here in the city?
Dallas has always been a place of opportunity. And because of, again, it's a very welcoming, and if other cities make it difficult, Dallas wants to make it easy, or I'll say North Texas wants to make it easy. Dallas doesn't always make it easy, but North Texas community really does. And so the idea of bringing opportunity to people, which in turn brings opportunity back to the communities that they serve. So the idea of bringing innovative design and the sophistication of this part of the country has come up in the design awareness. And so to be able to be part of a lot of these projects that have these significant impacts for, again, all the infrastructure, all the arts district, the corporate clients that bring and sustain all these, those are the elements that really make this part of the country really successful. We're, always the last one in and hopefully the first one out anytime there's an economic recession. So we're staring down one of those right now, we think, but we feel like we're positioned, because this is such an opportunistic environment, to be one of the more sustainable, and again, I mean that in both economically and environmentally, markets in the country to keep the vibrancy here.
So Matt, what are you most excited about when it comes to the next projects you're working on, or the growth of Dallas, and how you're seeing that articulated in the architecture?
So I mentioned opportunity earlier. The last stat I think I saw was there are 5,000 to 7,000 people a month moving to North Texas, not just Dallas, but to the North Texas region right now. Those people all need places to work, hopefully, places to go to school, places to worship, places to live, and places to have recreational amenities. So all of those things that demand has not slowed, regardless of what the economy is doing or not doing. So I think there's continued growth and a lot of opportunity still to come here. There's discussion of smart cities and a new way to develop downtown. The convention center is going to be a huge catalyst for that aspect of downtown. The master plan for that calls for bridging over I-30 and extending into the Cedars and revitalizing that neighborhood. So the evolution of the city, though, has gotten to a point of maturity where it can't all be high end, and we've got to start integrating the support places where folks that can still be affordable and still have maintainable and accessible or access to all these great amenities. So that's the new challenge I think we've all got, is not to over gentrify any one place and keep it as an equitable and sustainable from an economic and diversity perspective as well. So it's been real exciting to watch this evolve and to be here to watch it continue to evolve.
Yeah, a lot of change from West End in the 90s to now.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
And hopefully lots more.
Amen.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it.
Cool. Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Square. We'll see you next time.